Hi guys, it's Allie, and today we are going to be discussing The Wicked King by Holly Black. Before we dive into this book, I just wanted to give a little update on my reviewing method. This is my second review on this channel, and I wanted to devise a method where I could create the most structure so that it makes the most sense to you, and I can also make sure that I've hit all of my bases of things that I want to talk about. So I have created a method I like to call the C3PO method, not like the Star Wars character, but like a C and then like a little 3 on top because there's 3 C's. So the C3PO method stands for context, the context under which I read the book, like if I read it through Audible or if I had any particular expectations or assumptions going into the book. And then number 2 is content, and that is the more teachery side of me, which is more so the genre of the book, the age demographic, and this is also where I will include any potential triggers if that is something that you want to be on the lookout for. And then the third and final C is character, and that's pretty self-explanatory, just the character aspects that I enjoyed, that I didn't enjoy, whatever the case may be. And then P for plot is much the same as character, just things I liked and didn't like. And then the final category is O, which is overall opinion. It's just my overall rating, if I liked the book or not, and my Goodreads kind of review of it, I suppose. And so yeah, I'm also going to be splitting them into the spoiler and non-spoiler sections. So I'm going to cover the first 2 C's of content and context in the non-spoiler section. I'll also be going over some of my overall thoughts and whether or not I suggest you read this book in the non-spoiler section, and then we will move on to the spoiler section where I'll dig down deeper into character and plot and talk with you guys who have read this book already. So with that all said, let's get into talking about The Wicked King. Starting off with some context, The Wicked King is the second book in the Folk of the Air series by Holly Black. It follows Cruel Prince, which is the first book in the series, which came out a while back. And in terms of expectations and thoughts about this book going into it, I had some conflicting opinions because there was so much hype about this book on Twitter, on every kind of social media platform, but specifically on Twitter, like everywhere this book was being promoted and hyped, and everybody was excited about what was going to happen, and there was a lot of hype. And so I had that on one hand, and then on the other hand, I had my own opinions from reading The Cruel Prince, which were pleasant, but not necessarily as obsessive as a lot of people are about this series. A lot of them, it is like one of their favorite things ever, and for me it was a good read. I enjoyed the book, so I went into this book expecting it to be good but overhyped. So that was my anticipation of what I thought was going to happen. That's not quite what happened. I actually do think it lived up to the hype, though there was a lot of hype, but it was definitely better than I was expecting it to be, and so I'll talk a little bit more about that in the spoilery section. But yeah, so that was my context going into this book, kind of my expectations of what I thought this book was going to be like, so that kind of will inform my review a little bit. There's my bias there, sorry. Moving on to the content, this is a young adult dark fantasy novel. I don't know if it's actually branded as dark fantasy, but I would definitely consider it dark fantasy, and it takes place in a universe where the world that we know is kind of existing alongside this realm of the fairy, and we follow our character named Jude, who is a human who lives in the fairy world, has lived in the fairy world since she was very young, and she's just essentially trying to live in a world where everybody is more powerful than her. So that is the kind of general content of what this book is about, and it is a young adult, so it is more geared toward a teenage audience, we'll say. Technically 12 to 18 is the general range that you would consider for a young adult, as at least the demographic that they're aiming for there, but I prefer the board game way of things, which is just to say that we'll say it's directed at ages 12 and up. So that it would be, you know, the general suggestion that I would have from a teacher's perspective. I wouldn't give this book to a 10-year-old, but do what you want. So yeah, that would be the overall genre and age demographic of this book. Also, I want to just list out to you some of the potential like darker themes or trigger warnings that might impact you or somebody that you know that might consider reading this book. That is not to say that I think any of these things were done poorly by Holly Black. As a matter of fact, I think that all of them were done very well and all of them were very impactful and necessary within the story as a whole. But I do understand that some people just want to avoid certain topics altogether, and so I do want to list them in the non-spoilery section. So the potential trigger warnings or darker themes that at least I could pick out through my read-through of this text include the following. Again, last chance to mute the laptop or phone or whatever it is you're watching on if you don't want to hear these. So, last chance. I'm going to be looking down here because this is where I had the list and I don't want to forget any. So, the trigger warnings, as far as I can pick out, include neglect and forced starvation, not of self-inflicted variety. It is inflicted upon others. Suggested abuse. I say suggested because while it does happen, it's not in a particular scene. It is more suggested in the narration itself. Kidnapping, sexual harassment, death, and mild gore. If you have read The Cruel Prince, then these are pretty much par for the course. These are things that were also in The Cruel Prince. So if you read The Cruel Prince already and you were fine with that, then I would think that you would also be fine with this book as well. There's nothing that really goes any farther than that book does. So, there we go. The non-spoilery people, you can come back now. We're done with those. So, yes, there's the content of what this book is all about. Before I send you non-spoilery folk off to do some reading, or not to, if you so desire, I want to skip ahead to the O part of C-3PO and discuss some of my overall opinions on the book and, recommend whether or not you should read it. So, I would definitely recommend reading this book if you enjoyed The Cruel Prince in any capacity, or if just this topic sounds interesting to you. I thought it was such a great second book in a series. A lot of times second book in a series get a bad reputation because they can be somewhat stagnant and kind of just moving pieces around and getting ready for later books in the series. But this one just blew that out of the water. It was such a great second book. It was such a great compliment to the first book, and in some ways I would even argue it was an improvement on the first book. Because you learn a lot more things and the characters are put in a lot of different situations than they were in the first book. So I would definitely recommend you guys reading this, but if I say anything else, it's gonna be spoilery. So I'm going to cut off the non-spoilery section here. I hope you guys do pick up this book, and if you do, then come back and we can talk about it more later. But for those of you who have read The Wicked King, then stick around because we are going to start getting spoilery in roughly 3, 2, 1. Okay, so this book was a ride and a half, huh? I really need the C-3PO structure in moments like this because otherwise I would probably only talk about the end for the next 30 minutes. So let's start off by talking about some of the characters in this crazy, wacky world. Funny enough, one of the reasons why I didn't really vibe with The Cruel Prince as a book as much was because of the characters. So much of this series is about diverting expectations, and that includes your expectations about how characters generally think and act. Jude is definitely not your usual YA protagonist. She's a lot more ruthless. Carden even says in this book a bunch of times how she uses murder as like her go-to solution for every problem that she has. But so yeah, she's very ruthless, and she's very dishonest and manipulative, as are most people in this series. So I think one of the reasons why I didn't love The Cruel Prince was because I didn't like any of the characters as people. I thought they were very interesting characters, but they all just kind of sucked. I just didn't like them. They were not people who I would want to be friends with or be anywhere near, except for Oak, because Oak is adorable and needs to be protected at all costs, and that's pretty much the only reason why I liked Jude in the first book was because she was protecting Oak, who was genuinely adorable and pure and soft and sweet. For The Wicked King, I was already familiar with the characters, and so I think that contributed to making it a lot easier to get into their story this time, because I wasn't expecting anybody to be nice to each other. I was expecting everybody to be kind of cold and calculating. And as a matter of fact, I don't know if it was that or just the fact that this book was, like, better at this in some way, but what I disliked about The Cruel Prince, the fact that everybody was so cold and manipulative, actually became my favorite part about this book. I loved how nobody said what they meant. Everybody was just trying to get a leg up. Jude was the whole time just like struggling to keep this power that she had over Cardan, and Cardan the whole time was just getting much better at being conniving on his own right so that he could pull the wool over her eyes and get her back, which, that ending though. So that was actually my favorite part about this, was how everybody is really playing their own game, and it reminded me a little bit actually of like Game of Thrones, how there's no character really in this series that is 100% pure, except for, of course, Oak, who, once again, is just adorable and pure and needs to be protected at all costs. I liked the character development that we got for Jude in this book, and kind of over the series as a whole, because in The Cruel Prince she was definitely more so the underdog, and she was just trying to gain some power because she was in a position of almost complete powerlessness. And so I liked seeing that in the first book, but continuing on into this book, I liked seeing her have to deal with the power that she now currently does have, while still being in this world where she's not really in a position of true power. They keep referencing throughout the entire thing that, you know, she's the real ruler, but nobody knows that she's the ruler. And a lot of things Cardan actually does do on his own without her acknowledgement or permission, I guess. So there is this weird power thing happening here, and I'm really interested to see where that goes in the future. I also liked seeing how she kind of softened a little bit in terms of her vulnerability in this book. She rekindles her relationship with her sister, at least a little bit, and there's a brief period of time where, you know, she's about to rekindle a slight relationship with Maddox, I don't know how to pronounce his name, and she's at least trying to have a working relationship with him. Obviously by the end, when he realizes what was going on with the deal, then he kind of knocks that out. But overall, I liked seeing her try to rekindle those relationships with people, and also after the whole events of the kind of undersea place, that when she comes out after this like horrible traumatic experience, how she kind of plays this role of almost like a hardened soldier kind of, which I really like seeing characters like that. So the arc potential that is in this book was really interesting to me, and I really liked seeing Jude change in that way, especially because I hadn't really liked her a lot in The Cruel Prince. So this book gave me a lot more reasons to like her, so I look forward to seeing how her arc continues in the next book. Which brings me to Cardan, the Wicked King himself. So I absolutely adored Cardan in this book. I think he really shined in this installment of the series. In the first book, he kind of was a wishy-washy character for me in terms of I couldn't decide whether or not he was a true kind of anti-hero where his circumstances in any way excused his actions, and I'm still not really sure about that. But in this book, I really, really enjoyed seeing him showcase how much he has learned about being able to swindle people in the same way that Jude swindled him. He's been learning so many things like pickpocketing and just in general how to coerce people into doing what he wants them to do. And he did have some of that in The Cruel Prince as well, but to the point where even Jude doesn't comprehend that he might be tricking her kind of the whole time. That's something that was really interesting to see in this book, especially because of all of the foreshadowing that there was, that something like the ending might be on the horizon, because even when they have their first, like, make-out scene or whatever, when they have that interaction, it's on the pretense of him saying, like, do you think this will work? If I was to trick somebody into liking me and to sharing their secrets with me and to being vulnerable with me, if I were to do something like this, do you think that would work? And Jude is like, yeah, that would work. And that's what starts that whole scene between them. And when you think about it at the time, it's just kind of like, oh wow, like that's you know, funny, cute. I don't know how you would describe that. But then when you come to the end, like, there's a whole nother meaning to that whole interaction between them, because it opens up this possibility that he was literally asking that because he wanted to know if it would work against her too, and it did. So that was something that I really loved seeing in this book, was Cardan, and seeing him just really come into his own, and also to come into his own as the king, because in the whole Cruel Prince, it wasn't really up for discussion that he was ever going to be the king, and part of that was Holly Black trying to direct our eyes away from the fact that he was indeed going to become the king. But he really fits the king role pretty well. I mean, I'm not saying he's like a good king, but he definitely fits the bill in a lot of ways, and he's matured in that way from being just the prince. So that was something really interesting that I loved seeing about his character, and seeing how he was getting better at manipulation at the same time that Jude was becoming more vulnerable. And so that was a really interesting power dynamic to see shifting in their relationship, and also just as the story as a whole. Let me be clear about something first. I don't ship these two. Not yet, at least. There are very specific circumstances under which I will consider these two as being like a relationship goal, because currently, like, their relationship is so toxic and terrible, and I mean, that makes sense because she literally enslaved him for a year and a day and he banished her. So it's not really like grounds for a super happy, relationship, which I don't know that that's possible for these two ever, but definitely not now. But what I do love about their characters and kind of their off and on relationship that they have going over these two books, and especially in The Wicked King, is how well these two characters complement each other in the course of the story and kind of in the course of the themes in general. Fear and anger are such essential parts of both of these characters in terms of just their core values. This idea that anger is both a cause of and a response to fear for these characters is something that is so deeply ingrained in each of them. And of course they do react to it in different ways, but they primarily use it against each other. So that's something that's really interesting to see how they interact with in the story. And I think Holly Black could have gone a different route with these characters and had them reflect on their fear and start to put their anger elsewhere rather than using it against each other, against themselves, against others. But what I love about this book is that they currently are incapable of doing that. They haven't reached that point yet, which is why I don't think they can have a healthy, functioning relationship as of right now, because so much of their relationship is founded on fear and anger. These two are so consumed by that fear and by that anger that they're constantly fluctuating between vulnerability with each other and distrust of each other. And a lot of times those things line up, and that's why we have a lot of scenes where they at least appear to be both very vulnerable or both very distrustful. But in any situation, as soon as that is not the case, when they are on opposite ends of that spectrum, then that is when the person who is distrustful gets to kind of take their chance. And that is what happened in The Cruel Prince. Cardan was vulnerable and Jude was not, and so she took her chance to take a position of power over him. And then in Wicked King, the opposite was true. Jude was very vulnerable and Cardan was not, and so boy went for the throat. Which brings me to the plot of this book. So this book is mostly about power struggle, especially for Jude. Like I kind of mentioned before, this has kind of been her goal the whole time, is this idea of a power struggle. But for this book in particular, her goal the entire time is just to get Cardan to basically renew his contract with her and let her stay in power for a little while longer. And every single thing that happens in this book is in direct opposition to that goal. Every single thing that happens to her, whether it be Cardan scheming and the end where he does pull the wool over her eyes, or her being kidnapped, Locke trying to murder her, literally every single thing that happens is in direct opposition to her attempt to maintain the power that she currently has. And so that was a really interesting thing to see her have to do in this context of the story. And also it made for an interesting ending, because after following her this entire time, just desperately trying to maintain her hold on this power, to have her gain even more power when Cardan offers to marry her and make her queen, that is like a huge surge of power that she didn't have before, and then it is just as suddenly ripped away from her. So we feel like she got more than she even was going for, and then just as quickly she loses everything she's been working towards for the entire time. Even in the course of The Cruel Prince, she's lost absolutely everything. She has to go back to the human world, which she never wanted to be in anyway. So that was really interesting, and I think really spot on for Holly Black to kind of pull the rug out from under Jude like this. Another quick thing that I wanted to mention about how great Holly Black is at foreshadowing is the whole ghost betrayal storyline, because I kept an eye out for this actually, because after Nicasia, I don't know how to pronounce her name, after she tells Jude that somebody who she trusts has betrayed her, there are a lot of times after that moment where she reflects back on that. In like italics, it'll have her remembering this line, that someone who you trust has betrayed you. And she has that thought about a bunch of people. She has it about her sister, she has it about other members of her little group. I can't remember the name of it, oh no. But she thinks about this in terms of a lot of different people that she claims to or feels like she does trust. But, and I might be remembering this wrong, but as far as I'm aware, she never actually says that in regards to Ghost. She never contemplates the idea that he might have been the one to betray her. And so, in a way, there was a little bit of, like, reverse psychology there, where the fact that she didn't accuse him at all, at least in her mind, of being the person to betray her, immediately clued me in that he was the one who was going to betray her, and like that did happen. But overall, like that foreshadowing element of even, it's like reverse foreshadowing. She's planting all of the seeds that are kind of going to bait and switch you at the end. So a lot of red herrings, which Holly Black is the queen of red herrings. So that was a really interesting thing. Finally, let's talk a little bit about that ending. So at The Cruel Prince, I was shocked but not necessarily very surprised that Jude would have tricked Cardan in that way. But at the end of The Wicked King, I was probably happier than I should have been that Cardan got back at her, because like I was saying before, the thing about the relationship is that I don't feel like it can work currently. I don't think it makes sense in a narrative or in a real world scenario for them to be a happy couple right now. And so when he was like, I trust you and I hope you trust me, will you marry me, whatever, I was kind of like, okay, yay, but I wasn't actually very excited about that. I thought it might be something that she would revoke later, that like maybe in the next book that they would have issues or something like that. But I definitely did not foresee that he would immediately use it to his own advantage, and in fact probably was planning this the whole time. And so when he did do that, which I mean, the embarrassment of having that happen in front of like everybody, including your like biggest political enemy, there's a lot of, you know, embarrassment to be had there. But I literally almost applauded when he was like, oh, I guess, well, she's banished then, because it was such a smart move on his part. And again, it was very Game of Thronesy. It was just something that I feel like a Game of Thrones character would definitely do. It was like a Tyrion kind of move, like just so smart, and I was like really proud of him for doing that, even though I get we're supposed to be on Jude's side because she's the main character. But I was really happy for Cardan there. I was like, yeah, like, damn right, you do that. She like screwed you over, you screw her back. So yeah, I was really happy with that. Now, of course, words matter in fairy, and so he definitely crafted that sentence and planned it out ahead of time so that he could say it exactly the way he did. And there are so many potential loopholes in there. First of all, it says that the crown must pardon her in order for her to be able to step foot back in fairy, and she is technically a holder of a crown. She is the queen, so she could technically pardon herself. I don't know if that's the way that Holly Black is going to go, but it is possible. I also think it's possible that he's planning on pardoning her at some point anyway for his own goals. Also, they say that she cannot step foot into fairy, but this is fairy, so there's a lot of other methods of getting somewhere that don't require you to step foot anywhere. She can literally, like, fly somewhere into the, castle or something like that. So there are a lot of different ways that she can get around this, and I'm sure there is going to be some entertaining and interesting way that she will, but words are very important. She's definitely going to use those to her advantage if Cardan isn't already planning to use them to his own advantage. So I don't think this is going to be, a huge plot point. I don't think the whole next book is going to be her trying to get back to fairy. I think it might be something where she pretty quickly finds a way to get back. So I still love what happened, though. I still like that she got banished, but sorry. I look forward to seeing how she is going to manage that in the next book as well. And finally, the O in C-3PO. I already talked about this a little bit, so I won't go too in-depth, but yes, my overall opinion of this book was obviously very good. I thought it was fantastic. I absolutely adored this as a second book in a series. It was so successful to me. I hope you guys felt the same way. And it was a 4.5 out of stars for me, or a 4 out of 5 if you are a Goodreads purist. But that was mostly just based on some minor things about my personal opinion, some of which I felt like weren't even worth mentioning in this review because they were much more personal to me and my likes and dislikes when I'm reading, and very little about the actual merits of the book, which I preferred to focus on more analytical things about character and plot and things like that, rather than just my opinion for the sake of my opinion. So those things included just a little bit of extra creep factor in the Balakin plotline. He was just very creepy and he weirded me out, and I thought that some of his creepiness was not overdone, but just like extra, a little bit more laid on than I would have preferred, but it definitely served its purpose within the plots. Also, my personal reflections on the Locke storyline this time around were just kind of generally pleasant, but not as good as the rest of the book, in my opinion. They just were not as exciting as the rest of the book, and so that happens when you have a book that is 90% amazing and then one part that is just good, is that it looks worse by comparison. And so those were kind of the two medium-sized things, and then there was a bunch of just like little stuff where like little things that I just personally didn't vibe with as much. So not really anything that I felt like was worth mentioning here, because the book overall is absolutely fantastic, and so there's really no reason for me to bring any negativity to that. So yeah, that would be why I took out that 0.5 stars, that 1 star. Sue me. But yeah, so that is it for my Wicked King review. I absolutely loved this book. I hope you guys loved it too. If you did, or if you didn't, then leave a comment down below and share some of your favorite or least favorite moments of the book with me. Do leave a little spoiler warning so that people who haven't seen the book can not get spoiled in the comments. But I definitely did not cover everything in this review, so I would love to talk more about this book with you and all of the different crazy things that happen in it. So that is going to be it for me. I await your comments, and if you like this video, do leave a like, and if you like my content, then do subscribe, because I make videos every Friday, and I will see you guys in the next video.